So we will first configure Artifactory, right? And again, this is the experience that you can add to your resume. Like we've used JFROG Artifactory for modules. So what you can do is that you need to create an account with JFROG, a personal account with JFROG. Once you create that personal account, this is just a trial version. I did give you 14 days to trial, but 14 days is good enough for you to know how it works. So once you have your account, once you have login account, it will bring you to something like this, whereby you can create repositories. You can have packages, whatever packages that you have. So once we create repositories inside of this JFROG, right, once we create our repository, we can create Docker repositories, we can create Terraform repositories, Helm repositories. So this is where our artifacts will live. And not only that, JFROG is also used for scanning. So let's say we want to use a custom module from the Terraform registry. So we can create a mirror, what we call a Terraform mirror, right? That will be like a remote, such that our pipelines will pull from the registry, but it is pulling it through JFROG because this is our repository. So we set a mirror of Terraform. We set a mirror of the Terraform registry inside of JFROG. So now with that, if we want, it uses what we call this X-ray, so that it always scans. So every module, before we deploy it, it is pulled through JFROG. We have the X-ray that scans it. Once the scan passes it, then our pipelines are able to deploy. So we are using this as another line of defense, right? So once we have that, we are able to, what we'll focus on mostly is just creating our repositories. And once we do a deployment, it will be like an artifact. It will be an artifact that will be released. So now for that particular artifact that is released, we are able to do it. We are able to configure our pipeline so that they pull it from here, right? They pull it from here. So now for JFROG, there is a little bit of code that you guys don't need to worry about. The basic thing is you can create repositories directly from here. But I like to do everything in Terraform. So let me see. Put it here. So we will configure our JFROG environment. Once we have it configured, then we will push one of the modules that we have up and see how we can pull it, right? Push it up and pull it down. So for JFROG or Artifactory, right, I just have one user. I'm just creating one user who is admin. That's the name. And again, all these things you can go to, if you search Terraform Artifactory, like user, right? Artifactory user, that's a data source. You can always say, these are data sources, that's an Artifactory user. We will set permissions, we will set groups, right? We will set groups. We can set repositories, like local repositories, local repository, if you want a Docker repository. So we can set all that. So a local repository, it will be something like this, Artifactory local generic repository. Then you just give it the name, and the key is required. That is the name of your local repository, right? So you can look at all the documentation for local repositories like that. Federated. I look at federated repositories. These are like the mirrors for Helm. You can look at Terraform federated modules, right? Modules, so you can use that. If you have, you can create like a mirror of the Terraform registry, right? So with that said, so we're creating a user. We're going to create some groups. Again, this is the code that I use for work, but I'm just referencing it here. So we're able to create a group for like our bots, which are just machines, but we won't necessarily need all that at factory, right? Different groups, people that can just write, right? And we will set our groups here using for each. We have a locals group, right? We have our inputs. We will see how these inputs are going to use. I just have an input. We have our locals groups, so we can have a locals group here, one group here. So how Artifactory works is you need to have a namespace, right? So for every group will have a namespace. So we can say one group is CloudOps. It will have a namespace, a Docker namespace. the namespace will be called CloudOps, right? A generic repo will be called CloudOps bin. It uses Helm and Terraform. We'll have a DevOps group that has a Docker namespace, right, called DevOps. It's generic repo. That is just the name of the plugin that we've used. Then these are just the generic licenses or permitted license. If you have any license that can be used in there. Then these are the mirrors, the Docker mirrors. We are mirroring Docker Hub. So we can pull from Docker Hub, but pulling from Docker Hub, we'll be pulling it from Artifactory. Okay, we are pulling it from Artifactory. So we have these mirrors. We have Kubernetes charts, Bitnami charts, Argo charts, cluster autoscaler. So all these are charts that we are pulling it from these particular repositories, but they will be pulled through JFrog. Okay, and then we're just creating all these repositories. These are Python repositories, Helm repository, Golang repository, npm, cron, generic, right, and Terraform. So all these we are creating all these groups, and again, all this is just Terraform code. We have our permissions, our permission sets. We are creating permission because every group will need to have a permission, right? Every group will need to have our permission. We have the read-only permission for those developers group, which are machines, right? Machines only, okay? Machines only, that is the group that we had passed here. Now we have all these permission sets, but I'm just showing you guys all this to know that we can use Terraform to configure our Artifactory, okay? For our providers, again, we have required providers as Artifactory, and that X-ray that is going to be used for scanning in Artifactory. So that's our provider, right? Then once you go to JFrog, you create a token. So that is the token that we are using for access. Again, we're doing all this in Terraform, but you can do it. Where's my JFrog? You can do it on the console right here, right? So for the console right here, I can go to admin, like user authentication. I can go to user authentication, and under user authentication right here, I can look at users. This is how users can authenticate. User management. I can create users. I can create groups. I can create permissions. I can create access tokens. So you will need to create a token. Once you have JFrog installed, or rather you have an account created, the other thing is you'll need to create a token, because it is this token that will enable you to have access to JFrog. Okay. So once you have that, all right, Gabriel, you have a question?
Yes. Yes, Prof. Prof, please, I'm trying to understand the difference between the GitHub, because I know that GitHub should be managing our source control. So I'm trying to understand the relationship between GitHub and this JFrog.
Okay. So GitHub technically is for version control, right? It is for version control. But JFrog is just like Nexus. It is for artifact. It is for archiving. It is where you put your artifacts. So once your artifacts have been built, then you store them in an Artifactory. You store them in a repo somewhere. But GitHub is a version control environment. So it is not necessarily an Artifactory. It is not necessarily an artifact storage environment. Okay, we just use it for collaboration. But you can use, I think it's called GitHub packages. You can use packages, and we'll also explore that because you'll have a lot of questions, or different companies use different options. But I'm exposing you to JFrog because it is the most popular artifact, just because it can store any kind of artifacts, Docker, Helm, Run, Terraform, any kind of artifact. You can create different repositories. You can assign users. You can assign bots that are going to get your artifacts from here and basically pull them, right?
So with this, so with this now, we don't need to use Nexus anymore. Oh.
No, we don't need to use Nexus.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, this is the most popular artifact storage that is in the market right now. All right, Ola, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I just need, I want you to, if you can shed more light on that mirror. I've been saying it for a minute, but I don't actually understand the details about it. And also, I don't know, this is not actually a question, but I don't know how to put it. If you need to configure something, I just need to know, I want to know how you go about it in Terraform to know all the component that you need to pick the resource, like all the codes that you need to pick to make what you need to write the code. Because I always have the problem about that. If I need to, let's say I need to, for example, I'm just going to use a role. If I need to configure a role in AWS, I know that I need a role. I know that I need a policy, and I know I need a policy attachment. But there are more to get than that. And I just need to know how you go about to know what is needed if you need to configure a resource and to know what is needed. Because if you go under the registry, you will see a lot of things, but I don't know how to put my question that you understand what I'm saying. The code that you just showed us right now, it has a lot of things. If you look at the JFrog, you can see the user group, global role. But if you need to configure this user, you're just not going to go to Terraform and just search for user and just copy that code and edit it to your own taste. With this user, there will be other components in Terraform that you need to, other resources that you need to add to configure the user or the group or I don't know how to put it.
So again, there is no with DevOps, there is no shortcut to this. That's why they always ask for your experience, because most of these things come with experience. The more you work on it, something like Terraform, I can start with creating one thing, right? I can start by creating an EC2 instance, just using the two parameters, AMI and instant type. But as I run that, I plan it, yes, I know that it's going to apply. But then I start testing it. You put checkup on it. Then you realize, oh, this instance that I've been creating is actually not compliant. It needs something else. I need to enable metadata. I need to pass an instant profile. Now, how do I create a profile? Because it just says create an instant profile. So now with that, you go onto the registry and you find there is a way you can actually create a profile. So with that, with subjecting it to tests, now you have a little bit of an understanding of what you need to create a resource that is compliant. So then as you keep building onto that knowledge, then it just becomes second nature. That you know if you're configuring an instance, these are the bare minimum that you need. You need ABC and you need a profile, you need metadata, you need it to be encrypted, you need monitoring to be enabled, right? Because all those now become second nature and you know where to find them. So if you've worked right now, JFrog, it's new to most of you might not know. But just like any other application, these are third-party application that is going to be used. It is an artifact storage. The same way we work with Nexus. When you're working with Nexus, you can do it. You can create users in there. How do we create users? That again, you can find out. Now, every user that you create, that user will need some permission, right? A user will need some permission. You cannot, we have different types of users. We have users that maybe you want to give read-only permission, right? Because they're not admin, they just want to see what is in JFrog or in Exit. We have users that you want to have admin privileges so that they can create other users or they can do things in Exit, they can do configuration. Then we have other users which are machines. You want your applications to be able to access JFrog. These are machine users. These are bots that you're configuring so that they can go there and do it and get credentials or get artifacts. So you can configure permissions for bots. So those are the three types of users that you can create, right? Now, once you've created those users, then you are giving them permissions into the artifact. What can they do, right? So you are controlling that. Now, how do these users authenticate? Are they going to log in using a password? Are they going to log in using SSO, single sign-on? How are they going to authenticate? So now you can think about that. So it is a process, right? And then what are they coming to JFrog here to do? Mostly it is about repositories. So repositories, this is where we store all our artifacts. So you have to create repository. But I just don't want a repository. There are different kinds of repositories that I can create. So I can either create a virtual repository, right? I can create a local repository, or I can create what we call a remote proxy, right? So a remote proxy. So this remote proxy, this is like, I have my Terraform registry here, or I have my Docker registry for my Docker images. That is my Docker image, my Docker hub. But in JFrog, I can create a proxy, right? I can create a proxy. So this proxy is maybe a Terraform. And then this proxy is maybe Docker. So because it's a proxy, it just means that if I want to access Terraform registry, my pipeline wants to access Terraform registry to pull something from the registry, I have a proxy configured in JFrog. And the reason why I have this proxy here configured is because I'm using JFrog to scan everything. Because this is public, I'm pulling from a public registry here, right? I want to make sure that whatever I'm pulling into my pipeline in my production environment, that everything has been scanned and everything is good. It is free of that. So I'm using JFrog. I'm using JFrog as a proxy, right? I'm using JFrog as a proxy so that it is going to pull. Let me say this. I want my pipelines to pull Terraform, but instead of it pulling it directly, it is going to go to JFrog as a proxy. Then once it does that, so it is JFrog that is going to be pulling from Terraform registry. So this proxy, it is a mirror. I'm mirroring Terraform registry here. Okay. So I'm creating a Terraform registry mirror or a Docker registry mirror. So whatever is in the registry here, I have created a proxy, which is a remote proxy in JFrog, because I'm only configuring my pipeline to pull all my artifacts from JFrog. Okay. So if I need anything, I'm using the proxy to pull. The proxy pulls it, but the advantage of this, it has the X-ray that is going to scan everything that it's pulling from other registries, scan it. So if the package is vulnerable, then it is going to fail it. That package will not be pulled into my environment. Okay. So,
okay, sir. I just want to say about, I thought our pipeline, we pull our we use our modules that we've already written, not necessarily the information from Terraform website. We've already put those resources from Terraform or copy the code, and we've already edited them to suit our own environment and put in the information that we want, and we've already packaged them together as a module. And that module is what we're using in our pipeline. Is that correct, right?
Yes, of course. Of course, that's correct. But what I'm trying to explain to you is don't miss the point of what JFrog is. I'm explaining how you can configure JFrog, the diversity, the different repositories that you can create, right? So for us right now, we'll create a local repository. The repositories that we'll create, we will be pulling from our local repository, not a remote repository, not a proxy, because we will build our custom modules locally, push them to JFrog. Then once those modules have been pushed to JFrog, then we are just pulling them from the local repositories that we've created. We are not pulling them from this. But what I said is in JFrog, you can configure all this. If you need third-party packages to be pulled, to be used, something like NPM or something from Docker, yeah, you can configure Docker mirrors, right? Like for our Docker images, we know we will push them to GitHub, to Docker Hub. Right? But now what we will do is that because we have a Docker mirror here, we'll be pushing our images to JFrog, which is a mirror of Docker Hub. And if you want to pull a Docker image, we are pulling it from JFrog.
Yes, yeah, I think the example of Terraform you used there, that is what confused me. All right, so instead of us, let's say for M, instead of us going to the website directly to talk to m.io or m.com, we talk to JFrog, and JFrog will scan whatever we need from the third-party website, and we can use it. Like, okay, I understand that fast now. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Prof, I think that you should. So the GitHub repo, is that the same with the Terraform?
Oh, sorry, I don't think I understand. The GitHub.
Okay, so yes, because for me, the GitHub repo is actually where that controls all our repo, right? All everything is in GitHub. So I think what I'm saying that this Terraform, this box that you drew for Terraform, is that where our GitHub will be in the equation?
No, this is Terraform registry.
Okay.
Oh, this Terraform registry. This is GitHub. Our pipelines are in GitHub.
Okay.
Right? Our pipelines are in GitHub. But again, I was explaining the fact that you can configure. All I had asked about what are these proxies or remote, right? Remote registries. So what are mirrors? So I was explaining you can configure a repository that is a mirror, right? A repository that is a proxy, which is called a remote. So Terraform is remote, but I can configure a mirror of Terraform within my JFrog. So therefore, my pipelines, if I wanted to call a module from the Terraform registry, I will not call it directly, right? I will still use JFrog, call the module from JFrog, but JFrog will pull it from the registry, scan it. Once it scans it, if that module passes the scan, then that module will be pulled to my pipeline. But otherwise, we have a GitHub repository where we are creating our custom modules. Once we create our custom modules, we are pushing them to JFrog in our local repository, okay? In our local repository. So once we push that in our local repository, then when we are ready to do a release, right, our pipeline is going to pull this module from JFrog, right? And again, X-ray, meaning it is going to scan it here. Once it pulls it, then we're able to apply it.
Okay, makes sense.
All right. So one more question, Josiah.
Yes, Prof. I wanted to ask if the X-ray you're talking about, is it doing a kind of static analysis, or it is just scanning, just to identify the exact, module or the exact component you want to pull up from a repository? So I don't know what is the exact role of X-ray, because I know that JFrog is mirroring the repositories. So is it like X-ray will help identify the component you want to bring, or is just going to scan through the code? I don't know which type of scanning is it? Is it like maybe a checker or something?
Yes, so it is going to scan based on the policies, default policies. So if something is not what is the word? If something is not compliant or it has vulnerabilities, if the module has vulnerabilities, so that is going to be scanned, and those are the things that it's going to return, right? So it just scans for vulnerability inside of that module, right? And you've obviously you can configure it has like security policies built in it. You can configure policies so that every module that it pulls, it is basically scanned to ensure that there are no known vulnerabilities inside of that. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Mari, I'll take that as the last question. Then we can
Thank you, Prof. Yeah, actually, thank you. So I never knew there's a Terraform have a registry. So thanks for that information. Then my question is, for example, initially we use Nessus and we also use the SonarQube. That means with the JFROG, we might not actually need SonarQube, for example, for our code quality test, which actually the JFROG can also do the quality test, kind of the gate, and also the serve as our artifactory.
Okay, so in terms of quality, it again depends on the kind of packages, because you can do Maven repositories. You can create the different. If I go to repositories or packages, fields, artifacts, right? So if you go to repositories, let me just clear this. Yeah, drawings. If you go to repositories, let me just create a local repository. So these are the kind of repositories that you can set. You can create a Docker repositories, npm, Maven, PyPy, right? Gradle, Go, Debian, RPM. So all these Chef, Alpine, Terraform, Conda, Cron. So all these are the different local repositories that you can create here. Now, because we are running Maven, if you had Maven, so you can push your artifacts in this Maven repos, right? So for code quality, I think depending on the project, I've never explored using SonarQube in here, but what it's basically doing is just scanning. I don't know. I guess you can configure policies. You can add a new policy, right? You can add a new policy. You can put a policy name. What is it? Security license, optional risk. So you can configure, and again, you can use Terraform to configure all this, but you can configure the policy, you can add the rules, what it is, right? Then now with that, it is going to be able to scan. But mostly they use the X-ray just for security, not necessarily for like code quality, right? All right, but in terms of artifact or storage, then yes, definitely we can use this instead of Nexus. Yeah.